Welcome to episode 29 of the Psoriasis Geek podcast. I'm your host, Gemma Bogue, and today we're deep diving into a topic that comes up all of the time. We're talking about the best treatments for scalp psoriasis, and we're focusing on the 4 key challenges of living with scalp psoriasis and what you can do about it. Because in my opinion, like most things with psoriasis, there's an umbrella term, scalp psoriasis, but actually within that, there are a lot more smaller problems going on. And in fact, targeting a specific challenge that you're having might make your treatment much, much more effective. So in today's conversation with Russ Cowper, we're going to deep dive into what I think the 4 key challenges are. We're going to be talking about things like what to look out for in ingredients when you're shopping for shampoo. We're going to be talking about treatment options. We're going to talk about some of the experiences that we've had. Russ and I have had very, very different scalp psoriasis experiences. So hopefully there's loads of goodness that you can take away from today's show. Now, before we start, I wanted to talk about the episodes that we've got coming up. So as I mentioned in last week's episode, we're moving on to a monthly schedule as I am now 7 months pregnant, and I would very, very much like to keep the podcast moving through my maternity leave. So I'm trying to batch record all of the content that we need and release it on a monthly basis. So the best thing to do is to click the subscribe button so you don't miss any of those episodes. So November, we are talking to psychologist Anna about how to raise resilient kids with psoriasis. So this is essential listening if you have a child with psoriasis, and is definitely worth recommending to anyone you know who does have kids with psoriasis, because we're talking about strategies on how to help them cope with some of the emotional and psychological challenges that they experience from being a young child and all the way through the teenage years. December, we're talking 11 steps to avoid when healing naturally with psoriasis. We're talking to Jennifer Phillips. She is a holistic health coach and a fellow psoriatic warrior. And we're going to go through some of the pitfalls she's fallen through and some of the key things she's discovered while coaching herself and also her psoriatic clients, so you don't make the same mistakes that she did. Now, January, we have nutritional therapist Sally Duffin, and she's talking about how to safely identify your trigger foods without feeling denied or depleted. So we're deep diving into several different strategies that you can use when you suspect that you've got food intolerances aggravating your psoriasis. We're talking about different types of testing method if you would like to go through clinical testing, and also we're talking in depth about elimination diets. Not just how to do them, but how to do them so that you can maintain your integrity while you're doing it. Really, really interesting conversation with Sally. And hopefully in February, the dermatologist has confirmed we're going to talk about this, but we haven't recorded the episode yet, is a focus on topical steroids. So how we can safely use them. Are they safe? I've collected loads of your questions and I'll be pitching those to him. Some of the mistakes we commonly make, everything basically to do with using topical steroids we'll be covering in February. Now, you will know if you've been with me for a while that I started this podcast as my passion project. It meant so much to me to get the information out there that I always wanted growing up with psoriasis, talking about the things nobody else really openly talks about, and also to bring you access for free to experts that you may not be able to afford to see or may not have physical geographical access to. Now, my time on this podcast will always be free, but as we approach the 30th episode, the costs for hosting the podcast and the production costs are starting to rack up, and I would very much appreciate if you can spare $1 a month to help support some of these accumulating costs. If you can help me out, then I would love for you to come over to the Patreon page I've set up. It's patreon.com, patreon.com/The Psoriasis Geek. And for just $1 a month, you can really help me out covering those practical, boring nuts and bolts costs that are associated with running a podcast on the long term. Thank you in advance. I love that you're here. As I said, my time will always be free. I very much appreciate the community that we're building around this subject, and I love hearing from you. So without further ado, let's move into my conversation with Russ. So today we are talking about the best treatment for scalp psoriasis, and we've touched on this before because we've talked a little bit in the past about your hospital experiences. I have been having a little think about this, and I think that really when we talk about scalp psoriasis, we're not talking about one specific thing. I think there are 4 issues when we have scalp psoriasis. So you'll have to let me know what your opinions are. So yeah, I think 1, scaling and flaking. 2, itching. 3, clearance of plaques. And 4, preventing and reducing hair loss.
Right, yeah. Because
I don't know about you, but I've had all of the problems when I've been in a really bad flare. So my scalp's been so itchy, it's literally driven me insane. But most of the time I don't have the itching, but I do have some scaling and flaking. And when my scalp psoriasis was really bad, when I was a teenager, the scaling and flaking was a really big problem for me.
Yeah, I've only really had it badly on my scalp once. And that was probably the first time I ever went into hospital. And at the time, I used to have quite long hair. And then one of the nurses come in one night and give me the wiggly finger and said, "I've got something for you." I went, "Oh, that's interesting." She said, "Follow me." Took me in the bathroom, and out come these electric shaving shears. And she proceeded to shave all my hair off. And I just sat there, all my hair had gone. And that was the best thing I have ever done, ever, when it's come to scalp psoriasis. I'm a bloke, though, so it makes it easier for me. And since then, I've always kept my hair fairly short. I don't get too long. It's easier to treat. It's easier to get the whatever I use on my head. And also, it's reduced the itching. I don't itch anymore because the hair's gone. And even though my age, I suppose I am now thinning on top, so I think that's natural, but I don't think I ever really had any problems with hair loss that I can recall, because I was quite hairy. But I'm getting bald now, so I've not had problems with like my scalp now for probably 20 years. It was only when I was young, but it was thick and it was really, really difficult to get rid of. And I used Cocois on my hair and put it on, kept it on overnight, slept in it, then washed it off in the morning, then rinse and repeat the night after. And I did that for a week. And that pretty much cleared it up. But I still, at that time I did itch then, but now, no, not at all. And I've been pretty clear with my head. You know, I still have little bits around my hairline on the back of my neck and a little bit like just above my ears, but nothing like what I used to have. But whether that's to do with the drugs that I'm on now, I don't know.
See, I've heard a couple of people talk about shaving their heads, and way back in episode 2, Joe talked about how shaving his head made a massive difference to treating his psoriasis. So do you think it's simply the fact that it makes it easier to apply the creams?
Yeah, that's simple. Yeah, it's just easier. It gets to the affected areas quicker. It's easier to get into your scalp. Obviously, if you've got long hair, you've got to massage it through your hair to get to your scalp. So if your hair's short, it's just common sense that you get to the affected areas easier. And I think it makes the creams, or whatever your choice of creams or solutions, whatever you use, more effective. It just makes sense to me.
Right. Because essentially when you're thinking about treating scalp psoriasis, treatments depend on the severity of your psoriasis, whether it covers your body or just your scalp, and how much hair you have. So I think for me, I know that in my last flare, in my strep flare, I had to talk myself out of shaving my hair off. My itching was so bad. But because I had such extensive coverage on my body as well, I was eligible for systemic treatment. So I think one of the pitfalls people often fall down when they've got scalp psoriasis is they end up buying all of the different shampoos and topical things that they've found on the internet, and they spend hundreds of pounds on all of these different things, and they just don't give them the results that they want. But actually, you can get the whole spectrum of treatments, can't you, for scalp psoriasis?
Yeah, there's loads. I mean, and probably the simplest thing I would use now if I go in hospital is a little bit of cocois and just use moisturiser. Just use white soft paraffin on my hair. Because if it's easier if you're in hospital, because obviously they do all the linen and all the washing, because you can only really have, you've got to change your pillows every night because they get so messy. So I'd just recommend a decent moisturiser on your head if you can. And then obviously if it gets worse, a bit of cocoa, that's the best thing I've used. Shampoo wise, I think my one of choice is probably Alpha Sil. I've tried most of them. T-Gel was okay, but Alpha Sil was probably my one of choice. I tried one I think called CNL. I think, but I didn't like the smell of that. That was made your hair smell funny, so I got rid of that. And just generally, right now, my hair's pretty much clear. I'll just use Head and Shoulders, and I'll keep the Alpha Sil for maybe, a couple of days a week, and that's about it. But I do understand why people would go out and spend a lot of money on it, because it can be so unsightly, and if you have to think about what colours you're wearing. If, like, my school uniform was navy blue, so when I had it at school, it just looked like I had dandruff all down the back of my collar, and I used to get the mickey taken out of me for it. And it wasn't dandruff, but at the time I thought it was dandruff because I didn't realise what it was. So you have those things to think about, and I do understand why people would go out and spend an awful lot of money trying to get rid of it. And especially, I think you ladies would, because your hair's like your crown and glory, isn't it? You want to look nice when you go out, and I totally understand that.
I had a similar experience to you, and I want to come back to the different treatments for scalp psoriasis. But as we've started talking about things like cocois and T-Gel and Head and Shoulders, I thought we'd focus now on dealing with scaling. So my school uniform was black.
Right.
So right. That is like the devil colour.
Yeah, the devil, yeah.
There's really our scalp psoriasis. And then when I was 14, my parents made me move schools, which obviously, as a young teenager, that was awful, until I found out my new school uniform was light grey. A light grey, because we're in the UK, like a light grey wool blend mix that was different. I mean, it sounds like I'm exaggerating, but it was literally life-changing. In assemblies, I actually listened to what people were talking about instead of spending the whole time trying to subtly brush the back of my neck. We're hoping nobody would notice.
I get that, yeah, totally. Yeah, I know. It must be so hard, isn't it, when you're young and you think everybody's staring at your collars. It's all down, especially black. And mine was navy blue, But to go to grey must have been wonderful for you.
Honestly, it was incredible. It was just, It took so much stress out of my life. And that's the thing, isn't it? We living with psoriasis know that a lot of the problems that we have are to do with the psychological strain of living with the conditions. There's nothing worse than, the boy who you fancy sitting behind you in assembly, and that's all you can think about. Down your back, it was awful.
Yeah, absolutely.
So speaking of boys' stories, psoriasis and cocois, there was a boy in my school who lived on my street, and my new school was an hour away from my house. So there weren't many kids who were going to come and knock on the door and say, do you want to come out and play? And I intentionally didn't spend time with this person because I didn't want them to come and knock on my door. And the reason was I also used cocois, and I used it every other day for about 8 years through my entire teenage years.
Wow. Every
other night I had cocois on my head, and it was just one of my fears that he would come and knock on the door, and I'd open the door thinking of that
coal tar smell and have to explain what was going on.
Oh, bless you.
I know.
Oh, I know. Oh, that's sweet.
If I could go back in time, I'd say, look, Jem, I know it's not cool, but what you should do is you should get, one of those sweat headbands that tennis players wear. Put one of those on to stop it dribbling down onto your face. And then you can get those towels, can't you, that wrap around. So I'd have like my cling film, my like tennis band, and then a towel around the top. And it would have been awesome. It would have been self-enclosed, and I would have been a little bit less embarrassed.
Oh, that's some sweet. And poor lad, he might have even fancied you as well, and never thought why you were brushing him off, and it was all for cocoas.
I know. So, Adam, if you're listening to this now, I'm ever so sorry.
Yeah, poor lad. He might have even liked the smell.
I do now. I find it really nostalgic. It's really that coal tar is the smell of my childhood, though.
Yeah, I'd love to go to hospital and find a pot and stick my nose in it and just sniff it for a couple of hours. That must be us though. We must be weird now because we like it. But that's a sad story in a way, though, isn't it? That we have to think back for things like that. The reasons why you wouldn't do things. So poor lad, bless him, and poor you. Obviously, it must have been hard.
It was. It was hard. I shan't lie. But then, what happened after that was, because obviously that was traumatic, I started experimenting a little bit, and I found a Dead Sea shampoo when I started university, and started to use that, and my scalp psoriasis cleared really quickly. And couldn't understand why. I mean, it had been quite significant through my childhood. And it turned out I was sensitive to a really common ingredient in shampoo. And if you go into any supermarket, all of the affordable shampoos, that are not on the kind of alternative section, they all contain sodium lauryl sulfate. And it's really drying for the scalp. So it won't be the miracle cure for everybody, but I would definitely recommend, especially if you only have psoriasis on your scalp, that you try a shampoo that's free of sodium lauryl sulfate and free of perfumes, because they're both known irritants for the scalp. Yeah,
and the free of perfumes one's an obvious one, I think. Well, I didn't know the sodium thing. I've never heard of that before, so that's a new one for me to learn. But I've become so entrenched in my ways that if it ever happens to me, cocoas is my answer. So I've never really ventured outside that. I've always been happy with that, and it's always worked for me. But I will always bear that in mind if cocoas doesn't work for me next time. It's great to know that there is other stuff out there, because I think one of the problems we always have as sufferers is we think, is this the only thing that's ever going to work? Am I stuck with this forever? And, but it's good to know there's other stuff.
So let's talk about the kind of things that you want to look for if you are going to buy an over-the-counter product for psoriasis. There are 3 key ingredients that you want to look out for. So we'll talk about coal tar, because we're talking about cocoas. That is a prescription coal tar preparation, but you can buy coal tar shampoos from your local supermarket. And the reason you might want to do that is the coal tar is good for easing off the flakes, for the scaling, but also it reduces inflammation and it can help reduce itching. How have you got on with T-gel?
T-gel's okay. It's been quite a long time since I used T-gel. Going back probably 10 years, maybe even, and it was very, very rare that you could get T-gel. And from what I remember, my GP wouldn't prescribe it. And when I was in hospital, we got given Alpha-Sil in hospital, and I took out the Alpha-Sil that was left home with me, and I've stuck with Alpha-Sil ever since. But what I do like is coal tar soap. That's nice, rather than obviously the old style smelly perfumey soaps. I mean, when I was younger, we used to have this block of green soap that was used for everything. I think we used to wash clothes with it. So,
Yeah, is it Palmer's? I know which one you mean.
I can't remember. I just said block of green soap. I think I probably, when I was a kid, I might have even got bathed in it, had my hair washed in it and everything.
When I went backpacking, we used to for everything.
Yeah, the multi-purpose thing. You wash clothes, you did everything with it. But now I just use the milder, the gentler, the better, I think is the way forward.
I agree. So is is that a coal tar preparation or is that a salicylic acid thing?
To be honest, I don't know. I should have checked, really. But all I know is it's green. it's quite mild, and it doesn't smell particularly of coal tar. But it's just quite. I just find it soothing. It's not as harsh as maybe as some of the shampoos I used years and years ago. And I don't need much shampoo now, anyway, because now that I'm going bald, I only need a little bit of it. So I think the bottle I've probably had that for about 3 years now, and it's still got loads in it. No, but I don't know what ingredients are in it.
I've just Googled the picture and I used this as a kid.
Right.
I've completely forgotten it existed. But I can't find the ingredients. We'll come back to that one. So coal tar can help a lot of people. If you want the preparation that you're taking to your scalp, you will need to go and see your doctor for that. Salicylic acid is a common ingredient that you can find in, and that helps to reduce the plaques, but is less involved in reducing inflammation. But if you've got thick plaques, things with salicylic acid might be quite good. Just watch out because some people do have sensitivity to salicylic acid. So it might be worth doing like a little patch test. We put like a little bit on your wrist before you start slapping it all over your head. And then you talked about Head and Shoulders, and I've heard a couple of people say this. It never worked for me, but there's an ingredient in there called zinc pyrithione, and that helps to reduce inflammation.
Right. I didn't know that either. It's just Head and Shoulders it's simple shampoo, I think, and it's cheap. You know, there's no way that there's no way I'm the sort of person who's going to go on the internet and spend £25 on a bottle of shampoo from some guy who says this is a miracle cure. I'm not going to do it. And I think Head and Shoulders just does the business for me. And I don't use it every day. You know, maybe 2-3 days a week I'll use that. 2-3 days a week I'll use my Alpha Sil. You know, and then the other day I probably won't wash my hair because I'm too lazy. But it's been fine by me. It's not caused me any problems. So
I really like what you're saying there about the price. I think that's really important. And then the other thing is, just going back to my traumatic experience of scalp psoriasis as a child, you know, when you go swimming with your friends, it'd be much nicer to wash your hair with like Head and Shoulders. That's like a common thing. But when you pull out, you know, when I used to pull out my tar shampoo with my prescription label on, like, it just encourages people to ask questions that you really don't want to answer.
I can imagine, yeah. I can imagine loads of people staring at you thinking, what's she on?
What's wrong with her? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it just draws attention to you, doesn't it?
So those are the kind of ingredients you want to look for if you are shopping for over-the-counter products. And just to be aware that quite a lot of the time when you start testing several products, they might all have the same active ingredient. So it's unlikely you're going to get massive difference in the effects that you're having on your scalp if you buy 3 products containing salicylic acid, for example, unless one of them has a higher concentration than another, in which case you need to find your intolerance because you may cause burning damage to your scalp if you use a preparation that's too strong. But you can talk all this through with your doctor. They'll happily go through that. And I'll put a list of the ingredients on the blog post that goes with this episode.
Well done. Yeah, they should be out there. And there's people we can get too easily taken in, I think, with these like wonder products. And then they get them home and it's just a load of crap in them.
Well, I think we've had psoriasis for so long, we both just get really frustrated with the marketing that goes on involved in psoriasis related products. It can be quite frustrating.
Yeah.
So there's another thing that you said that I really liked. You talked about the fact that you rotate your shampoos during the week, and chatting to a dermatologist, that was also recommended to me to help keep the benefits of each of the different ingredients and the different products going. It's important to rotate the use of your different ingredients in your shampoos. So that's something worth bearing in mind as well. So if we move on to one of the other challenges, dealing with itching. So have you had much experience of itching with scalp psoriasis?
I haven't really, no. I haven't really had a lot of problems with itching full stop. But I think that may be due to the fact, one of the first times I was in the hospital, if I ever started scratching, you used to get a crack off the sister. She wouldn't have your itching, so I'd sit there wanting to itch and thinking if sister catches me, she's going to slap me. So obviously she couldn't do it now. And I think mentally I thought, I itch. No, I don't itch. But I haven't really suffered that much problems with my hair itching. But again, I've had short hair now for probably best part of 25 years. And I can't really recall it being that itchy when I was younger, but obviously I must have, because I used to get it all over my blazer at school. So I must have itched, but I don't recall itching, if that makes sense.
So let's just move aside that the rules now definitely state that you can't give someone a good crack for itching.
No, you can't.
As a professional. Would you have been less likely to itch if the nurse turned around and explained the Kubner effect to you, that if you itched and caused skin damage, then you would increase inflammation and actually increase the scaling? Would you have stopped itching?
Well, the Kubner effect was explained to me as well, so I was aware of that, and that probably played a part in my in the past of, I shouldn't do that. Don't break the skin; it's going to make things worse. And so I was aware of that, but I've never really been an itcher. I've always been a soother, and I think there's a difference between itching and soothing.
Oh, absolutely. Let's talk about that. Soothing.
Yeah, there's an itch where you use your nails, and the soothe where you use your fingers. So you can soothe with your fingers, where you itch and scratch with your nails, and I think that's two different things. Because I will often find myself unconsciously just rubbing that. I have a particular problem just on the inside of my knee at the top of my leg, and I find myself unconsciously just rubbing that. I don't scratch it, but I rub it and it's just soothing. And I don't break the skin. I just soothe, and I think that's one of my soothing points. I don't know. Do you have soothing points?
I had a place on my ankle where I used to rub myself. It's like a self-comforting thing. So if I sat in a pub by myself waiting for someone, I'd find myself scratching, rubbing my ankle. It was really weird. And then I got psoriasis. It must feel
weird if you're in a pub and you're rubbing your ankle.
No, maybe. I didn't get a lot of attention from anybody in a pub, so that's maybe one of the reasons why. So I would rub it, and I got psoriasis there, and then I rubbed that, and it felt really soothing. And then I read about habits, and I thought, this is a really bad habit. So I put a plaster over the psoriasis to stop me from rubbing, and the psoriasis actually cleared on my ankle. So my self-soothing was actually making it worse.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense as well.
If I was probably stressed at the same time, which probably wouldn't have helped. I'm not very good in pubs, but soothing's, I think, really important, and there's a really good distinction to make. A lot of the things we do when we have scalp psoriasis are to soothe the skin, and that's really important. So I know I put a post out on Instagram today, and people who replied were talking about the fact that they use different oils to rub into their scalp, and that's very good for soothing the skin. So I think there's a lot of benefit there. And then I listened to an interview with a dermatologist, and she was saying, again, about soothing using natural oils. And she said there's not really one oil that's massively better than any other oil. It's just the action of putting something on that soothes the skin. And she recommended actually moistening the scaling with water before applying the oil, because then the oil keeps the water near the scalp and helps to soften the plaques. And I thought that was a really nice thing to try.
Yeah, that sounds an interesting thing. Yeah.
So it's easier for you because you have very little hair, so you can just get like really nice balms and things and just rub them through. Whereas if I did that with long curly hair, it would take me such a long time to get that out.
Yeah, it would be very, very difficult to get it out. Whereas it doesn't matter for me. I can put anything on my head. It doesn't matter. It's just easy. It's easier to get off in the morning. It's 2 minutes in the shower. It's gone.
That's it. See, if you do use oils and you have long hair, top tip, put the shampoo on before you put water on your hair when you get in the shower, and the oils will come out a lot easier.
Yeah, good tip.
So in terms of dealing with itching then, some of my favourite things to do is menthol shampoos.
Right. No, never tried them.
Tingles, and it's just really nice because you get a break from the itching because you've got this lovely like tingling feeling in your scalp. Right. Using conditioners, preferably one without loads of chemicals and fragrances and things in. Anything that's going to keep your scalp moist. Reducing the use of hair dryers and hot styling products near your scalp, because if you dry out the skin, you're more likely to be itchy. And then it's worth talking to your doctor about taking antihistamine tablets, because sometimes when we itch, an element of that is a histamine thing. So antihistamine tablets might help reduce the itching.
Yeah. I mean, those things that you've just said, I've no need for any of that because my hair's short. They make such a difference, because I don't dry my hair with a hairdryer or anything like that. I don't even dry it. I just get out of the shower and it's virtually dry straight away. Just a quick, just put the towel on it, pat it, my hair's dry, So a lot of those things don't apply because I've got short hair. I've never taken antihistamines, but I've seen them be doled out on the ward in hospital, like doled out like toffees for some people whose itching's driving them mad. I've never had them, never needed them. So in a way, I think I've been very lucky.
You have been lucky, 100%. Yeah. In my emergency itching pack, I've got Vicks Vapor Rub and antihistamines.
I've seen people especially if you're in like a 6-bed ward at hospital, where one person starts itching, and in the moment within 5 minutes you've got a symphony of itches. They're all going at the same pace and they're all doing it, and I'm sat there thinking, no, don't join in. So I think it catches on, and before you know it, everyone in the ward's going all scratching, and I'm like, no, I will not do it. So. But I'm lucky, and I was in hospital once with a poor lad who had eczema on his head, and he itched that bad. He was literally, his face was covered in blood every morning. He'd scratch in the night, and he ended up, he contracted, what's the thing that there was the big thing about in hospital not so long ago, the infection.
Not the MRSA.
MRSA, yeah, because I contacted that as well, MRSA, at the same time, because we were sharing headphones to listen to the cricket. But I contacted MRSA and ended up on antibiotics to clear that, because I didn't realise the significance of MRSA at the time. It's something that I think people should be wary about if people are itching and they do that. It's something they should be aware of. Maybe don't share headphones and don't do stuff like that, because you never know. It's not something I would do again. But then again, I was young and I wasn't aware of it. And I don't think at the time MRSA was particularly well known anyway. Whereas I think now people know about it.
Absolutely. And I think just there's a general risk anyway. If you think about how many bacteria and viruses and fungi we get under our nails, and then we're going into our skin and we're cracking away at it.
Of course,
then we are much more prone to damaging the skin surface and introducing those pathogens into the body where they shouldn't really be. So there's another argument against scratching.
Scratching. Yeah, be a soother. Be a soother, not a scratcher.
Oh, I like it. I think that's going to be the quote for today's episode. So let's move on to clearance of plaques. So let's start talking about actual treatments. So going to the doctors about your scalp psoriasis. We've talked about coal tar already, getting some kind of coal tar preparation, but there are other treatments, aren't there, that we can use on the skin on our scalps?
Yeah, I think the best thing I've ever used for clearing plaques anywhere on my body is white soft paraffin or yellow soft paraffin, whatever is available at the time. And the same was applied to my head. I know it's messy and I know it's not nice and it gets everywhere, but that to me is the easiest and quickest way of getting rid of it, because it lifts them so quick. And the sooner you lift the plaques, the easier it is to treat, because you've got to get rid of the plaques before you can treat them properly, before you can treat what's underneath properly. So you have to put up with 2 or 3 days of feeling rubbish and having mess everywhere to get the benefits. And that's really what I would do every day of the week.
And that's essentially because it's locking in moisture, isn't it? So it softens the plaques and it makes it much easier to move the plaques away.
Yeah.
If you've got long hair, I would try this on a very small section first, because it's quite hard to get soft paraffin out of your hair.
Yeah, totally agree.
But definitely worth trying. Do you use cling film to move that process along, or is just putting it on your skin sufficient?
I have only ever used cling film on my shins. I've never used it on my head. They call it occlusion, isn't it? It's the term you use. I've only ever had that on my legs when it was particularly thick on my shin one time. And I'm not even sure whether I'd be too happy about doing that again, because since I did that, I've ended up with ulcers on my legs.
Right.
Because obviously it breaks the skin down, and it's been, I've struggled with ulcers since then. I've got ulcers now on my left shin. I've had them on both shins, but I've never done cling film on my head. Never.
See, I think that's a really good point that you've brought up, because you are softening all of the skin in the area when you wrap it with something like cling film. And also you need to be aware when you're using something like that heats up the surface, that if you are using an active ingredient like you are with cocois, it increases the speed of absorption into the body. So there are some treatments that you put on your skin that you shouldn't wrap in cling film. So it's another one of those things that you do need to check with your doctor before you start doing that kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, I used to be prescribed topical steroids for my scalp. So a lot of the treatments that you can get for psoriasis on your body can be adapted into liquid treatments that you can apply to your scalp. So I know you can get Jovanex and the steroid betamethasone. Quite often they're mixed together, aren't they? In your favourite combination, actually, Enstellar foam can be used for scalp psoriasis.
Right, I've never used it. I did use one a long time. Bethamoose, I think it was called. Bethamoose, was it?
Yep.
I think Bethamoose. I used that for a short period, not for very long. But I didn't really need it. It was just more of a maintenance thing at the time. But I've never used Enstellar on my head, because I'd say at the moment I don't need it because my head's clear.
Yeah, I've not used it on my scalp because since I cut out using sodium lauryl sulfite, I only really get it around my ears and my hairline unless I get ill. So that's not been out long enough for me to have tried it. And then there's some treatments that I haven't tried. So there's a vitamin A treatment called Tesseract. Have you had any experience with that?
No, never heard of it.
So they're the main kind of options in terms of topical treatments. And for most people, they help keep the psoriasis under control. UV light would theoretically work. It would work for you because you have less hair, but for me, that's definitely a no-go. Although I saw today when I was doing a bit of background research, someone's invented a UV light comb. So I'll be Googling that later and see what that's all about. But maybe if that works for your body, theoretically would work for your head. And then If your scalp psoriasis is classed as moderate to severe, or you also have extensive body psoriasis, you are eligible for the systemic treatments. So things like methotrexate, cyclosporin, and maybe even biologics, depending on the state of the psoriasis on your body.
Yeah, and also depending on where you are in the treatment pathways.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because obviously you need to work way up the ladder towards the systemics and the biologics. But obviously, the higher up the ladder you go, the better the treatments come. And I suppose that's one of the reasons why now I don't need anything really on my scalp, is because I'm at the top of the ladder. Whereas down near the bottom, I needed it all.
So let's talk a little bit about hair loss. Now, did you say that you haven't had psoriasis-related hair loss?
I don't think so. But I'm thinning on top anyway. I don't think that's related to psoriasis. I just think it's related to the fact that I'm getting old. And men get bald when they get old. And I was once told it's a sign of virility, which sort of cheered me up somewhat.
I have heard it.
Yeah. But I can't recall when I was younger having any hair loss at all. But I'm sure there will be people who will suffer hair loss. I think it's the nature of the treatments. I mean, there must be some people who suffer hair loss. Must be. But
I suffered hair loss for the first time at the age of 5.
Really? 5?
Yeah. 5.
Wow.
So I had a really bad flare. 5 or 6. My mum can't remember exactly how old I was, 5 or 6. But she said you could lift the scaling. It was like a cap, and my hair just came out when they pulled the plaques off my head.
Wow.
And then there's very few photos of me as a child, but I've got, the temples where most people start to lose their hair.
Yeah.
A lot of times during my sort of childhood and teenage years, I had hair loss in those areas. It was very thin.
Oh, bless you. Oh, that must have been horrendous for you, especially as a child, having to go through that. Even when my hair was that thick, it was like I'm wearing a skull cap. Even when that was lifted, I don't think I lost hair. I don't recall it. Like, I'd go in the shower and there might just be natural hair loss you'd see in the little bit of the shower where the water goes down. But I didn't lose any from what I can recall.
See, the thing is, scalp psoriasis itself doesn't cause hair loss unless it's really severe and starts to damage the hair follicles. Most of the hair loss is because some of the treatments will damage the hair follicle temporarily. But for me, quite a lot of it, especially during my teenage years, was mechanical damage. So I had really bad psoriasis at the front of my scalp, and I had to tie my hair back for school. So when I had my glucose treatments on, I'd get a comb and I would be hacking away. If I got up in the morning and I had to tie my hair up, I'd be using a comb. I'd be like seesawing. I didn't know about the Cobner effect until I was well into my 20s. I was just like, gotta get this off. I've got to get this off before I go to school. And that mechanical damage is what caused most of my hair loss.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, absolutely. You because it's so thick and cloying, isn't it? Like cocoas, and you're trying to get that out. I can get that why there's so much damage.
And then I think because of that, one of the really important things to do if you've got scalp psoriasis is to make sure that before you try to remove the scales, they're soft. Like now, I'll get in the shower and I get psoriasis behind my ears. I'll just wipe it with my hand. And if the scales is not soft enough for me to wipe with my hand, if I have to rub, the scales are not soft enough to come off. So I either need to stay in the hot shower for a little bit longer, or I need to soak my scalp in an oil solution, or what you're saying about paraffin, or a treatment like coal tar to make the scales soft enough for you to just be able to wipe them off.
Yeah, that's very true. Actually, I think one of the early things I found was scalp psoriasis was the bit that I had on the back of my neck where it started. It was too easy to pick. It was a picking place.
Oh my goodness, picking place.
Yeah, it was a picking place, so you just pick it and you pick it. And like you, I didn't know about the Kerber effects or anything like that at the time, so you just pick it, without realising the more you pick, the worse you got. And you shouldn't be doing it at all. But at the time, I didn't know. And as ever, I think that's one of the problems we suffer with people with psoriasis is we don't get the right education at an early age.
And like what you just said, it gets habitual and you don't realise you're doing it. And this is kind of like my ankle in the foot.
Yeah.
I remember sitting in class, and if I was really bored, in that spaces in my temple where my hair was thin, it was easier to get to. I'd pick, and I would enjoy peeling flake off and getting it out of my hair hole. I remember like pulling the flake like down my strands of hair. So bad for your hair. I'm essentially like pulling my hair like, on a daily basis in whichever lesson I was bored in, which I'm pretty sure was most of them.
Yeah, done it. Guilty of that as well, but you just do it, and you would do it without thinking.
Yeah.
But I think as I've got older and understood it more and more, I wouldn't do it now. Not at all. No. But it's down to education.
It is.
Isn't it? So let's hope that we are educating people a little bit.
Hopefully. And I think that's a really good point to make is now that you have heard our stories about picking and habitual rubbing and peeling off, just try and notice if you're doing it in the day. Like, it took me ages. It wasn't till psoriasis on my ankle got really bad that I started to notice that I was rubbing it when I was uncomfortable as like a comfort thing. Just see if you're doing that kind of thing. I know my psoriasis, because I've been really stressed the last couple of weeks when I've been ill, I noticed that because I've watched more TV, I've started like rubbing my knee, like I've got a patch of psoriasis. I've started picking the scales off while I'm watching TV, and I'm like, no, this is not helping this situation. And that one patch is way worse than the other patches on my leg, like way worse. So I think that's a good place to finish. If you're struggling with scalp psoriasis, I've summarised these 4 issues and some of our suggestions to help with those over on the website, thepsoriasisgeek.com. and have a little look at your daily habits and see if there's a particular patch of psoriasis or some flakes that you might be interacting with, maybe as a comfort thing that you could perhaps start to address.
Yes, very much so.
Okay, great. So if you've got any questions, you can put those onto the webpage, or you can contact Russ on Instagram. Russ?
Yeah, at Rascal MCFC.
And in our interview next week, we are talking to a child psychologist, Anna, and we're going to be talking about strategies that you can use to help raise resilient kids with psoriasis. So if you have any questions that you would like me to put to her, then make sure you send those to me. I'm Gemma at thepsoriasisgeek.com.
I hope you enjoyed today's conversation, and if you would like to find the show highlights and any links that we talked about in today's show, you can find that over at thepsoriasisgeek.com. Because there are so many episodes on there now, it's probably easiest if you just type what you're looking for into the search bar and it should bring the episode up for you there. If you would like a reminder on where to go to support the podcast, then you can head over to patreon.com/The Psoriasis Geek. It was lovely to have you with us again this time, and I look forward to seeing you again.